Hello, I'm Michael Atkinson. Welcome to Prime Time, a podcast where the aim is to talk about workplace health and safety because we want to make the workplace a safer place. Joining us today once again is Brad Houlihan from Pryme. Brad, thanks for being with us again.
Thanks,
Second
buddy.
episode. Feeling good? More confident?
I'm pretty excited.
This week, I want to chat about the topic of height safety, specifically preventing, dropped objects. Mm-hmm. You played a lot of rugby. We played a lot of rugby together. You're a second rower, a line out, sort of story and a half. You've been dropped from line outs.
There's a lot of risk there.
There's a lot of risk.
Wish there was some tool tethers to catch me on the way down, but
but probably not as serious risk as on the work site. When we think about the equipment, the tools, the machinery that's being used on work sites and the height at which it's being used, it's a pretty significant risk in terms of things dropping and the dangers associated with it.
Yeah, mate, 100%. It's a very serious business, and we're very fortunate that all the Australian workforce are taking it seriously. And you only have to look at some of the alarming numbers that, it's almost like a bit of a silent killer. The numbers from, Safe Work Australia, 19 fatalities happen a year. Something like 10% of workplace accidents are from dropped objects. Those numbers, start to ring a bell. And, when you go away to work, you expect to come home. So it's definitely out there. And but the good thing is that we're starting to educate our workforce to prevent those things. Yeah,
it's interesting you say that it is starting to be taken more seriously, and education is starting to get through. But I imagine it still exists, and for a long time it did exist. That it was just sort of, if it happened, it was bad luck. Yeah. But that's just not good enough to look at it that way, is it?
Yeah, 100%. And you see, you're again fortunate enough to go and work with these companies where, now they've started to really notice, what's happening. And you go around on a site and you hear so many instances, oh, this almost happened, this could have happened, this did happen. And they're all preventative. Fortunately enough now, there have been regulations installed into the Australian workforce. So there is an ANSI 121 compliancy, which is for tool tethering. Also in Australia as well, it's fantastic to see anything above 2 meters, you must have your tools tethered. So it's mandatory. So the Australian public and the Australian workforce, are becoming aware of it, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get some of those numbers down. Yeah,
we'll get to some of the tool tethers and the actual resources available to prevent drops a bit later. But just want to touch on the mentality, because I think when workplace health and safety started to change a little bit. It was probably looked at PPE as being, like steel cap boots and a hard hat. They're fantastic assets to have, but why are they not, that's all you need? Why do you need more than that?
Well, like a good example of that, Echo, is that, you only have to look as far as, say, a tool. Guys are working in heights, and before it was all mandatory, you go up there and, just have a bit of a punt and, fingers crossed you don't drop a bolt or a spanner or a wrench. You look at something even, as high as, say, 4 meters or 3 meters, you're dropping a spanner that's 4 kilos, 5 kilos. By the time it hits the ground, it's, 50, 60 kilos. So you're starting to really, 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 be very wary that, luck is bad policy, because you got so many guys that, workforces that, have drop zones, but they're very hard to avoid those drop zones. So when you start to look at, what could happen, it's a pretty big risk. So, we work with those companies to install new measures to help, create drops-free zones. And the message is slowly getting across, but, we can continue to work with the workplace health and safety and companies to create safer working environments.
I remember as a kid, this fascinating story I heard, and it's just sort of like, it really took me. It was like the story that, like, if you dropped a 20-cent coin off the top of the Empire State Building in New York, which I know is a massive building, but that could go through someone. Like, and when you think about a 20-cent coin, it weighs a matter of grams. And people on work sites are working with bigger objects than 20-cent coins. You've got massive wrenches, you've got tools, you've got machinery, that sort of stuff. Like, how do you sort of reinforce the danger that, like, it's not just a matter of making sure that you, a person, don't fall. It's a matter of making sure that the things you're working with don't fall as well.
Yeah, well, mate, it's a good one. You said that, and you talk about US. The very first thing that came out of Ergonom, which is fantastic, is tethering your tape measure. They had an instance where someone dropped a tape measure off, a 20-story building. It ricocheted off the ground and hit a pedestrian, killed a pedestrian.
Wow.
So, mate, then you start to talk about things like spud wrenches and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a good picture here. So Ergonion's got a picture of a wrench going through a skull of someone working in the workforce. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there you go. So it's
that's pretty striking. Like that reinforces the point pretty well.
Yeah, well, again, it goes back to what you're saying before, mate, about it's PPE. The hard hat's great, but the hard hats can only stop so much. Once you start to get above 2 stories, which you see some of the buildings floating around these days, they're up 50, 60 meters. Mate, it's pretty serious if it's coming down on top of you, yeah.
The education's obviously getting better. The acceptance of this as a serious consideration of worksite is getting better. Awareness is getting better. But what sort of attitudes do you still find on the worksite or from clients and people you're trying to sort of reinforce these important things to?
I think one of the biggest things is just, as we've spoken about before, is just culture. The culture is starting to shift, which is great. A lot of workers are starting to look after their fellow worker and try and get out the old she'll be right saying, or it's an older culture where people are being a bit negligent towards, again, their fellow worker. So it's just going in and working with companies to reinforce the importance of tool tethering and working heights, but also as well taking the risk off the company, saying, hey, here's a product that we can provide you with a declaration of conformity that's ANSI 121 compliant, that's third-party tested, and it gives the employer and also the workers confidence that they can go out and do their job and perform their job safely.
We've got a few of the items here, a few of the products here. Just talk us through some of these because they look pretty simple. They look simple to use to me, and if it's simple to use and it can prevent something serious happening, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
really.
So we spoke before about, this is just as simple, to give you an idea, a squid Ergonon lanyard, a shock-absorbing feature. Why do you want shock-absorbing? Because if you're dropping a tool and it's 5 or 6 kilos, by the time you drop it, it's going to give you a hard nudge. So a swivel action, double locking, 11 kilo lanyard. For anyone that's working in any construction sites, they can use on 3 or 4 sites. They can use just one simple lanyard. We talk about dropped objects prevention. This one little lanyard could save your fellow worker's life. Or you've got something where a lot of workers working, say for example, in elevated work platforms. There's a 37 kilo lanyard that can even attach to riggers, can attach riggers pipe. Very impressive equipment when you're working. Because remember, of course, guys aren't just having tools attached themselves. They're also working in elevated platforms. So everything from lift buckets to again, shock absorbing lanyards. It's a pretty big feature. Again, and very easy feature to prevent a workplace injury.
Can I buckle one to my belt and keep the kids on the tether so I don't lose them at the shopping centre?
There is no shock absorbing feature, so if they trip, it's there's going to be tears. So, but
they get away so quickly that I'm
one of the
looking
big
at that
features
thinking,
is the length. You see, so again, you can let them run, you can pull them back, but yeah,
just having a little bit of room to grow and to move without getting in
this
danger.
would have helped me early on in the lineups. A bit of shock absorbing feature on the way down.
It's always the lifter's fault.
There are kits as well. So a couple of times we'll get questions like, "Oh, we've got 50 or 60 workers. How are we going to tether all their kits?" Well, mate, we've got specialised kits as well. That again, we do a lot of toolbox talks, education, continuing awareness. But we have posters as well that you can pop up on site through our Pryme website too. We've got a wide range of Ergonon training videos. So if we can't get to you, you can simply pull the video up on how to tether a tool, what tool lanyard should I use, wide range of cheat sheets. So we're a resource because it's a very serious topic and it's something that we take a lot of pride in particular when selecting a tool lanyard. You can't just select one. You've got to make sure it's weight rated. You make sure, again, how many times you're going to be using it. Do you need a swivel or a D-ring? There are a lot of factors to take into consideration, but as you should when you're talking about such a serious topic.
Mate, it's been really informative for me, like someone who hasn't spent a lot of time on work sites listening to this sort of stuff. And when I think about a work site and I think about something dropping, I just think, why wouldn't you have a system in place, a tool in place, a resource there to stop that happening? Yeah. So to reinforce that, I think is incredibly important. It's great that the awareness is changing and the acceptance of it is changing because we're going to, as our population grows, I imagine we're just going to build up rather than out a little bit. So things are getting higher, construction sites are getting higher.
100%, mate. You only have to look out the window here. There's just buildings going up and up. So I think the mentality is changing, but at the rate that we're growing, we still need to continue to educate our workers because, as you said, there's only going to be more and more sites coming up, man.
Fascinating to chat again, Brad. Thanks for your time, and thankfully you've retired from rugby, so there's no more drops in the lineouts.
Cheers, mate.
Another great episode of Prime Time. We thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, because subscribing means you won't miss an episode. Give us a rating too. It just boosts it up the list a little bit more, and it lets other people know that it's out there and they can catch this stuff as well. Feel free to visit the website www.pryme.com.au. If you've got any feedback, jump on the socials, LinkedIn or Facebook. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what you'd like to hear. Send us some questions and we'll address those in future podcasts as well. Until next time, thanks for listening to Prime Time.